Hey friends, Corinne Sutherland here with Creative Worship Stamps. I'm going to be sharing how I created these two cards with some new stamps from our December release, our stamp of the month called Vintage Elements, and one of our new release stamps called Nature Silhouettes 3. So here I am just filling this whole sheet. This is basically a half sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. That it was a scrap I had left over from something else that I was using, and of course I don't, get rid of anything. It's a nice big piece of paper, so I decided to grab that and fill it up with these little rectangles, these decorative pieces from the Vintage Elements stamp set. I'm using archival frayed burlap ink from Ranger, and I'm just creating basically a pattern. I'm flipping them around different ways because this is just meant to be in the background. You're not really going to see exactly what it is. It's just going to add some really nice interest. I'm just filling in areas, kind of almost like a puzzle. There are some wider gaps that I left, and that's fine too, but once we cut this down and start using it, you're not even going to notice any of those areas that were that might have been more open than other areas. So once this is all done, I'm going to trim this down into basically two backgrounds for my card fronts. And the paper is about 4 inches wide by 11, so I will have a little strip left over here when I'm done trimming this down. And then I've got the two main backgrounds. So then what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to use some Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to sort of age these a little bit with some of this ink. I picked 3 different browns that I'm just smushing onto my glass mat and then spritzing with some water. The colors are Ground Espresso, Brushed Corduroy, and Walnut Stain. And I chose 3 different browns because I like the interest that it brings when you kind of have little bit of different shades of brown as you're doing this kind of a distressing to your white paper. And I'm not wasting any of that ink. I'm even sort of scraping the edges of my cardstock to pick up that ink, and then it gives me a nice little darker edge on each side then as well. Now, of course, these are getting wet, so I do have to dry them with the heat tool. A lot of times people ask what kind of cardstock I use for this. This particular time, I am just using a regular Hammermill. I think it's Hammermill cardstock. It's nothing fancy. It does soak up the water pretty well, so when you start to dry it, it gets pretty crinkly, but for this technique, it really is fine. I didn't have to use a watercolor cardstock or anything. So now I'm going to take Texture Tiles 1 stamp set, and I have the little grid, and I'm just adding some little areas. I didn't even put this on a block. I'm using VersaFine Clair Pinecone ink, and I'm just literally just putting, random little spots of this little grid. And then I picked up the script tile from that same stamp set, and I'm using archival black ink and just adding that in some random areas as well. So we've just got lots of layers of texture and interest going on in these background panels. So now I want to add some paint splatters, if you will. They're actually ink splatters, but I smushed that ink pad on there again. It was one of the Distress Oxide colors, and I'm just using some water and then a paintbrush to flick that watery ink onto my card background, or my backgrounds, and then I picked a different color that was actually Gathered Twigs Distress ink and added a different shade of brown to that. So now I've got my Nature Silhouettes 3 stamp set, and I'm going to grab my Misty, and then I've got this nifty little tool. I got these from Marcy from over at Stamp Junkies. She made these a few years back, and I grabbed them. They were such a great little addition for my Misty, just to help you to have kind of a spacer when you need it. And so that was super helpful with this project. And now I'm just going to ink up these flowers. I'm going to stamp them twice. on both of the card panels. So this will take a little bit for me to go through this process of, stamping each flower 2 times on each background piece. So I'm gonna stop talking. There isn't too much to say about this. I am using, I'll at least tell you this, a VersaFine Clair black ink, Nocturne ink for my stamping. And yeah, I think that's basically it. Pretty self-explanatory. So just have a watch, see how this process comes together, and then I'll pop back in for the next step. Okay, so now I've got all the stamping done of the silhouettes, and I'm going to take that Gathered Twigs Distress ink, and I'm just taking the edge of this little ink pad and I'm just rubbing it across the edges of my my cardstock to give it just a darker edge. And it's kind of messy too. You drag it across and you get some really cool variations and texture. So now this, I'm just going to show you a close-up. I thought I filmed this step. Apparently I didn't, but I did add some white paint splatters to these card backgrounds using some acrylic paint that I watered down. So I just wanted you to see that up close. It looks pretty cool. And now I'm going to take the Simple Sentiments stamp set, and these are going to both be sympathy cards. So unfortunately, I feel like we need sympathy cards more and more these days. I guess that's maybe the older we get. I don't know. Anyway, so 2 sympathy cards is what I'm making. So I'm using the With Sympathy Sentiment, stamping that twice on some white cardstock, 2 different times, obviously, making 2 different cards. And then I will die cut these off screen and then come back with them. So there they are, and I'm trying to just kind of figure out where do I want, placement wise, where do I want these to go. Playing around. I also grabbed 2 different card bases. So one of them is white and one of them is craft. And you can tell me after you're finished watching this video which one you like best. I think I actually like the white one better. I don't know why. I think maybe it just pops a little bit more. But I know, having the craft kind of matches with the vintage feel. So I thought I would just give it a try and do 2 different ones. So I'm just adding some foam tape to the back of these die cut sentiments, and I will pop those up obviously on my card fronts. I don't measure, I just eyeball. And there's the craft background. It just sort of blends in a little bit more, I think, on the craft background. It's not quite as stark of a difference. And because of the fact that I was using the craft background, I felt like the white was a little too bright. It didn't really fit. So I added a little bit of that Gathered Twigs kind of around the edges of that one, that sentiment. So this one's just a little bit more muted. Now I'm going to take the little sentiment strip that goes with that same stamp set, Simple Sentiments, and it says, "I'm so sorry," and I'm just stamping that directly on the card front underneath the popped up sentiment. And there they are. two very simple, I mean, they may not seem simple, but really it wasn't that complicated. Not a lot of, I mean, the layers are all in the stamping, but with the close-up here, you can see how delicious it looks. Definitely love the white one more. But anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching.